Aside from a place to live, for a majority of us, a car is going to be the most expensive thing we spend our money on. But how much can you really spend on them? Hey guys, it's Stype, bringing you a long list of the most expensive cars ever sold. But first, big thanks to NordVPN for sponsoring this video for when I want to watch a favorite TV show, but Netflix says, No, you're in the wrong country. Oh yeah? Click. Poof! I'm in the right country now! And it's not just that. God forbid I try to log in somewhere without using the NordVPN option of rerouting my connection through 2 encrypted servers. That's VPN within a VPN. That's double protection against anyone trying to read my password. Criminals, surveillance, nothing comes through. And let me tell you one secret. I never, ever turn it off. Nord is the fastest VPN out there, so fast that I legit can't tell the difference whether it's on or it's off. So, on, all the time. But now comes the good part. If you go to nordvpn.com/topcarstv, you can get yourself an amazing deal. A 2-year subscription plan that comes with a huge discount, plus 4 months for free. 29 days in, you don't like it? You get your money back. What's there to lose? nordvpn.com/topcarstv. The link's in the description. All right, expensive cars. But where to begin?
$1 million.
10 years ago, maybe, but these days, there are so many cars with that kind of price tag that mentioning them all would make this video longer than the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the extended edition. So let's get to the chase and start with a nice, cool $2 mil, which is how much you'll need to fork out for a Koenigsegg Regera, a luxury egg with so much power that it doesn't need a gearbox. Still holds the record for the fastest 0 to 400 to 0 kilometers per hour. Next up is the McLaren Speedtail, a car that I consider disappointing. One look at the super slippery sperm-shaped body and you'd think that this is the ultimate speed demon. It isn't. Compared to the much older Veyron, the Mac has more power, less air resistance, and yet it can't go faster. Why is it double the price then? I'd much rather spend $2.2 million in the LaFerrari Aperta. Thank you very much. In short, the most expensive of the Holy Trinity gets even more so when you take its roof off. More money still will get you a car that you can't even drive in the public. Such is the case with Aston Martin's Vulcan. Cool name, cool taillights, and a cool ability to rearrange your organs like it's Johnny Sins. Or if you prefer your extreme track-only monsters to come from Italy, the $2.5 million Lamborghini Essenza is the answer. It uses the Aventador as a base, but everything else is just more blades, more carbon, more power. Actually, it has the most powerful naturally aspirated engine ever.
Yo, respect.
$2.5 million is also the price of a Rimac Nevera. With 1,900 horses galloping through all the wheels, this all-electric supercar from Croatia is currently the fastest accelerating car you can buy. Could be proven too handful for some. Back to Ferrari. Remember the F40? Remember the F50? But do you remember the F60?
What?
This F12 coupe turned very limited convertible costs $2.5 million. First of all, if the Enzo wasn't called the F60, then no other Ferrari is allowed to. And the second of all, paying $2.3 million extra just to have an open version of the F12? That's insane. It might be better to add another $100,000 and get yourself the fastest Ferrari in the history of Ferrari. The fuckboy FFXK Evo. It's the track version of the aforementioned LaFerrari flagship, and it will cost you $2.6 million. Well, when I say 2.6, first you have to buy a bunch of regular Ferraris to prove to Ferrari that you really like Ferrari. Then you have to hope that Ferrari likes you back and selects you as a buyer. Only then you're allowed to spend $2.6 million on it. By the way, how do you guys feel about the new Countach? Personally, I think it completely misses the point. The old cunt was a futuristic car from outer space, whereas the new one is just a decade-old Aventador with a retro body, a mild hybrid system, and a 5 times asking price. But they've all been sold out, so what do I know? And now a car with a teeny tiny 1.6-liter engine, the $2.7 million Mercedes AMG 1.
He is the one.
Long story short, it's a Formula One car converted for road use. Not an easy task, which is why it's taking Mercedes so damn long to make it work, but if anyone can, It's going to be the Germans. Also, what the fuck, $2.7 million for an F1 based car? That's a bargain. The engine alone costs $10 million. Next up, the $2.8 million Koenigsegg 1-to-1. It's got 1,360 horses, and it's got 1,360 kilos, which translates to a power-to-weight ratio of 1-to-1. See what they did there? It was Koenigsegg's first track-focused car, poised to smash the Nürburgring record. But all they managed to smash was the car itself.
Oh, shit.
Only 7 examples were ever made. This one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and the one that was smashed, and then later rebuilt. So if you want to buy one yourself, you need to wait for some owner to get bored with it. Last time that happened, the asking price was $10 million. Moving on with another track Lambo on the list, the $2.9 million Sesto Elemento, which when launched was the least equipped and yet the most expensive Lamborghini ever. Not only did they have no radio and no aircon, there was no dashboard either. And as for the seats, just some foam pads stuck around the chassis tub. So why so expensive then? Because it was made from some new experimental carbon fiber that makes it very light and therefore very, very fast. And finally, the last car that will cost you less than $3 million is the Bugatti Chiron. If you've made it in life, you're driving a Ferrari. If you're crushing it, you're driving this, the ultimate blend of luxury and speed. But we can't talk about speed without mentioning the latest Koenigsegg, the $3 million Jesko. For that price, you can choose between the grippy version with that big wing or the slippery version without one. That slippery one will supposedly do 330 miles per hour. But as impressive as that number is, it's nothing compared to an option that costs $443,000 extra. The option, nay, the audacity to have your car unpainted. Imagine that. You wish us not to finish the car?
Oh, that's gonna cost you!
Then we have the Pininfarina Sergio, a rather plasticky-looking convertible based on a Ferrari 458. The performance numbers remain the same, but the other numbers? Not even close. Only 6 were ever made and sold to hand-picked customers for $3 million a piece.
I think I'll pass.
And to all of you waiting for the McLaren F1, we'll get to that later on because now we have its successor, the 3.08 mil GMA T50. Developed by the same guy who did the Big Mac, it retains much of what made the old one so great, like central seating position, manual gearbox, a high-revving, naturally aspirated V12. It even looks the same. One thing is very different though. The new one has a big fan that literally sucks it into the ground and keeps it stuck to the road like a chewing gum, which is great if you live in an upside-down Australia. What I find really pleasing about the T50 is the fact that despite being developed by a former F1 designer, it's not meant for chasing lap time records. It's just meant for the joy of driving. Unlike the next car on the list, the 3.25 mil Aston Martin Valkyrie. This one too was developed by a former F1 designer, Red Bull's Adrian Newey, and just one look at it should tell you what it's all about. Well-deserved bragging rights. And this begs the question, which one would you rather have? Next up is the Bugatti Chiron Pur Sport. Less weight and less top speed, but more wing, more grip, and more price, $3.3 million. A 100 grand more will get you a W Motors Lykan Hypersport. For a car that comes from the oil-rich Emirates, you'd expect it to have the biggest and thirstiest engine ever put in any car, but it doesn't. It does have gold stitching in the seats and real diamonds in its headlights because Arabs have no sense of style.
Why you calling me? I'm right.
If style is what you're after, then Italy sells the answer. More specifically, it sells the $3.5 million Pagani Huayra Roadster BC. Not only is it so exquisitely detailed to the point that it puts Fabergé eggs to shame, but it also is a tour de force of new technologies and materials. There is a reason why its creator, Horacio Pagani, is often touted as the Da Vinci of the car world. The second McLaren on this list is the $3.7 million P1LM. First, McLaren made 60 more edgy, track-only P1s called the GTRs, but then Lasanti, the same company that created Le Mans winning F1s, modified 5 of them to be road legal too. These 5 are called P1LMs and are by far the most extreme McLarens you can drive on the road. Continuing the list with a pair of Lamborghinis, the $3.6 million Sian and the $3.8 mil Sian Roadster. This one too is a rebodied mild hybrid Aventador, but at least it looks amazing. Probably not for long though. Elements of this incredible design have already been applied to the latest Huracan, and by the looks of it, they'll be featured on the Aventador's successor too. It's a shame really. You buy a very special, very expensive, standout Lambo, and then they water it down with regular cars that look a lot like it. Back with Bugatti. This time it's the ultimate edition of the Chiron, the $3.9 million Super Sport. More power and an elongated body can only mean one thing: top speed, which sadly is software limited to 273 miles per hour only. If you want to unleash the car's full potential, you'll need the special 300 Plus version, which, as the name suggests, can go over 300 miles per hour. The first car ever to do so. But you can't just get in and go. First, you have to tell Bugatti that you'd like to experience such speed. Then they'll prepare their test track for you, disable the speed limiter, do some checks on the car, and Godspeed to you, make sure you keep it going straight. The price for such a butt-clenching experience? $4.1 million. Remember the Valkyrie? Well, that was the street-legal version. The $4.3 million Valkyrie AMR Pro isn't. Around the track, this thing is so fast that it leaves the fastest Le Mans cars in the dust. Moving on with the Veneno, the ugliest, the rarest, and the most expensive Lamborghini to date. There are only 3 coupes and 9 roadsters, which sold for around $4.5 million each, depending on the salesman mood. Today, they get auctioned off for a lot more than even the fastest car in existence, the Bugatti Bolide. It has the same W16 engine as all of the other modern Bugs, but that's about the only thing that it shares. The whole new body is full of holes, blades, weird aero bubbles, and it also is made from the lightest materials known to man.
It's printed out of titanium. It weighs 100 grams.
As a result, the Bolide will sprint to 250 miles per hour in just 12 seconds. It will lap the Nürburgring in 5 minutes 23, and it'll set you back by a whopping $4.7 million. Totally worth it. I mentioned a Koenigsegg Jesko with a no-paint option that cost an extra 400 grand. Well, 10 years ago, there was another Koenigsegg with a paint option that cost 9 times more. I'm talking about a 4.9 mil CCXR Trevita, which, thanks to its carbon fiber body infused with diamond dust, sparkles in the sun like that vampire Edward. Another Bugatti now. It's the newly announced Mistral, the first open-top Bugatti since the Veyron, with a design that borrows heavily from the more expensive Devo and a much more expensive La Voiture Noire. Plus the no roof thing, I expected it to cost somewhere in the $10 million range, but no, the Mistral cost only $5. Must have something to do with the fact that, by Bugatti standards, it won't be very exclusive. Anyway, let's continue with the Pagani Imola, or in other words, the most extreme road-legal Pagani, $5.4 million. The aforementioned Bugatti Devo, which is a more exclusive and a more interesting-looking Chiron Persport, $5.8. And then there's the lot more expensive Huayra Tricolore, which is, as far as I can work it out, a Roadster BC with 40 HP more and some aviation details, like this pitot tube sticking out at the front, an extra gauge that measures your wind speed and knots, and a paint job that celebrates Italy's Air Force aerobatic team. It must be some extremely expensive stuff given that the regular Roadster BC goes for 3.5 while the Tricolore is 6.7 million. The recently unveiled Huayra
Coda lunga.
does away with all the crazy wings and blades for a more smoother, gentler, and somewhat alien look. Only 5 will be made, costing 7.3 million. And now, something very, very different. The 7.4 mil Aston Martin DBZ Centenary Collection. This actually is a 2-car package deal. You can't buy one without the other. The old-looking one is the continuation of the 1961 Zagato DB4 Racer. Basically, they started producing the same car again, with the same materials and the same techniques, while the new one is a Zagato version of the Aston DBS. Both are very pretty, and whichever way you slice it, very pricey. Now we come to the first one-off, and it's a test mule at that, the Maybach Accelero.
Excelsior!
German tires manufacturer Behulda commissioned this Art Deco-looking car so that they could run some high-speed tests on their latest performance rubbers. And while, yes, it was used for that too, Accelero's main purpose was to draw attention. It was a marketing stunt and an expensive one at that, $8 million expensive. But that's way back in 2003. Today, that kind of money is worth $12.8 million, which is noticeably more than the next car on this list, the Bugatti 110. This $9 million Bug is yet another Chiron reskin with slightly more power and slightly less weight. It's actually a homage to the old EB110, both in looks and the name, since the word 110 is Italian for 110. It's just that when I first saw it, I thought 110 meant god-awful. My god, is it ugly! And so, it took us very long, but we have the first rolls on the list, the Sweptail. Commissioned by an unknown buyer, this exquisite handcrafted rolling yacht has an unknown price tag too. It's impolite for Rolls-Royce to talk about such stuff, but many analysts speculate it's somewhere around $13 million. Last Pagani on the list is the Zonda HP Barchetta. After years and years of doing uniquely tailored one-off Zondas for his rich clients, Mr. Pagani decided to do one for himself. But spoiled rich people being spoiled, they all came knocking on his door yelling, "I want one too!" Okay, fine, how's $17 million?
Shut up and take my money!
Now, I'm sure you've heard about this one, Lavatur Noir. Yet another homage Bugatti, this one to some long-lost World War II era car. And unlike all other Chiron-based bugs, the Noir is more than just a reskin. Look at it from the side. The way the cabin has been pulled back, it's almost front-engined. Only one was made with an eye-watering price sticker of $18.7 million. And finally, the most expensive new car ever sold is the Rolls-Royce Boattail. It's a lot like the Sweptail, but with a soft top, a trunk full of cutlery, and one shiny umbrella that probably cost a fortune on its own. Price? Speculated at around $28 million. That's a lot, unless you're into classic cars. Let's throw in some of those too, just for comparison's sake. Take this 1968 Ford GT40, for example. It has a rich racing history, a couple of victories too, and it was owned by Steve McQueen. Sold for $12.2 million. The first ever Shelby Cobra fetched $14.3 million at an auction. Remember that continuation of Zagata Aston from the $6.7 million two-car deal? The real thing from 1961 cost more than double that. I mentioned the McLaren F1 too. It's probably the fastest appreciating car in the world right now, and it went from $800K in 1995 to $20 million in 2019. Jay Leno has one.
And now I realize it's the greatest decision I ever made.
This 1935 Duesenberg SSJ broke the record for the most expensive American car ever sold, $22.4 million. A Mercedes-Benz Formula One car from the 1950s, $31 million. One of the 3 out of 4 remaining Bugatti Atlantic SCs was sold to Peter Mullen Museum for $38 million. As far as I can work out, this is the most expensive car that has no connection to racing. On the other hand, the holy grail of car collecting, the Ferrari 250 GTO, is all about racing. Only 29 exist, and each one of them is more beautiful and with more history than the other. This all adds to the price. The last time one of these was sold at an auction, the bid was a record-breaking $48 million. It was the first car ever that was worth more than gold. But it gets more expensive than that. In 2018, this one right here, the chassis number 4153 GT, was sold privately for $70 million. Again, a record. And now, the most expensive car in the history of the world, the Mercedes 300 SLR Uhlenholt Coupe. With countless wins in the bag, the all-conquering 300 SLR was promptly retired from racing after that horrific accident at Le Mans.
Monster kill.
Sad news for the guy who designed it, Rudolf Uhlenholt. But instead of drowning his sorrows at the bottom of a bottle, he decided to keep his baby roaring by converting 2 cars for road use. Unofficially called Uhlenholt Coupes, these 2 were considered to be the fastest road cars in the 50s, which is nothing strange when you learn that the SLR was largely based on that Mercedes F1 car from earlier in the video. For long, it was speculated that if Mercedes ever decided to sell one, it would easily fetch over $100 million. But 5 decades later, and they still just kept them in a museum until May 2022. A secret auction was held with buyers carefully selected by Mercedes themselves. Only one car for sale, the Uhlenholt Coupe. The winning bid? $143 million. Thanks for watching.